Marjot and I were sleeping through another night. Both feeling pretty decent, despite having seen a bunch of dead people. We were trying to clean up the mess. All those guys that had attacked us. We still had 3 of them locked up in our little makeshift prison cell. We had some fun together that night. And then I got up. There was work to do. It's going to be busy times for us. I fed one of the prisoners. Decided to go back to bed for a little while. The animals looked hungry. We hadn't given them the go-ahead, wander freely. Marjot got up. She tended the infection of one of the prisoners. Ate herself a meal. We had to rebuild the door that had been bashed down. And I had prisoners to feed, their bodies to haul. We set some of the prisoners free as soon as they could walk. I'm sure they'd be happy to be alive, realize we weren't that bad of people. I was contemplating that while I was tossing horseshoes. And we were busy as we could get. I was harvesting plants from all around. We'd have something to feed the prisoners. We could use for our own food if we needed to. We were starting to run pretty low. And there was a lot of work to do before our kitchen area was ready. We chopped down the trees that were around our guns, as well as harvesting stuff, berries, apples, peaches, whatever was around. Making sure to tend that guy who was down and out. Well, that was another day. As soon as we got to bed, we had some fun together. Some cargo pods came down while we were in bed. A bunch of peaches, which we're happy to accept. Our plants are doing well. Should have a bunch in no time. Good crop. I got back to work on the cooking and butchering areas. Marjot had herself a meal, decided to do some cleaning. She had her hands full dealing with all these animals that we had around. She was also taking care of the prisoner while I focused on building the cook room. Didn't have a ton of blocks, so she got back on top of that. Seemed like that should be a priority. Our prisoner went berserk on us. Started bashing the door out. We ended up having to shoot the guy. Neither of us wanted to risk getting hurt by him. We had to rebuild the door he'd bashed out before we could contain him again, get him taken care of. Didn't want him doing something bad to us. He had a gunshot wound and was bleeding pretty good, but otherwise he'd pull through just fine. Marjot got him tended up. I was taking a walk, just chilling out a bit. Been a rough couple days. Marjot had herself a coffee. Went back to making blocks. I was working on the freezer. And I was off to bed. Marjot followed not too long after. We were both feeling pretty decent. And our prisoner seemed to be immune to his infection. We had a good time together that night again. And then we got up out of bed, get back to work. We set that last prisoner fella free and continued what we were doing. Marjot took a walk around. That guy made it out safe and sound. Hopefully he finds his way home without those aliens killing him. I feel like considering so many of them crazy aliens trying to kill us, we should all be sticking together. Nobody else seems to see it that way. We were off to bed once again. Another day was done. But the kitchen was coming together nicely. So was the food storage area, the butcher room. I kept right on working on it. Marjot kept on making blocks so I could work on it. There was a whole lot of trees I was still going to have to take out. So I focused on a bunch of that. Giving Marjot some time, make some blocks. We both stayed focused on our tasks until it was time to stop and have a beer break. Marjot went off to bed. After my beer, I tidied up a bit. The place was in kind of rough shape, but we were going to take it all apart before too long anyway. I did a little more work and then I was off to bed myself. It was about 11 o'clock. Some big thrumbos showed up. Seemed like nice critters. We were going to leave them alone. Didn't want to risk their madness causing us more harm. We had a whole lot of traps to rebuild yet, and a bunch of cleaning to do as well. I was working on that while Marjot tossed horseshoes. Somebody contacted us saying they were being chased. We didn't really have the capacity to deal with anything though. I told them sorry. I finally got the freezer done, got the roof put on, and I went back to working on the traps. In the meantime, Marjot kept right on making blocks. One of our alpaca had a baby about that time. And I was getting close to being done. I planned out where the butcher table was going to go. Same for the cook table. Things were almost there finally. Marjot still making blocks. We were still going to need a slew of them. I got the roofs put on. Finished the buildings. Made some access doors. Marjot kept right on making blocks. We had plans for another geothermal generator, should we need it. I was off the bed, a little disturbed, rotting corpse I'd seen while running around. Marjot put the first item we had in the freezer, some milk from one of the muffalo, and we were pretty happy that night. We had some fun together. It got really cold all of a sudden, so I decided we better get all those crops brought in as fast as we could. It's a little problematic. There was a psychic drone going. Marjot said it was just buzzing in her ear, driving her nuts. She's just gonna have to deal with it though. A whole lot of the plants were dead by the time I got around to harvesting them, which was just the next morning, but it was what it was. Marjot switched gears, stopped making marble blocks. We decided to slaughter some of the alpaca. We had way too many animals around here, and we could use some food. So I butchered them up, built the cook table, and made a plan for making some meals. Marjot said that buzzing in her ear stopped about that time, which was great. Our house was a big mess, all the construction, all the busyness. I was cold from being in the kitchen cooking food. Marjot was working with one of the muffalo. It needed shearing bad. While I was sleeping, Marjot came in to pray. Didn't disturb me though. We were running out of storage space, but we'd figure something out. There was some extra room we could grab yet. The rest of our plants were dying off due to the cold, as they will. Marjot had been off to bed. I had a meal, did some cleaning, did some cooking, and then I just chilled out, enjoying our new home. Wasn't a lot in it yet, but we'd get there. We still didn't even have a heater. It was going to be priority if it stayed cold like this. There was a bear hunting one of our alpaca, and it was one of the babies. It didn't take much for that big bear to kill it. We weren't terribly worried about it, in all honesty. Again, we had too many animals. We weren't really getting attached to them. About that time, another alpaca decided to show up and start being friendly. This one must have had melanism or something. It's all black fur. It's pretty cool. We hadn't seen one like that. I was off to bed a little early. Marjot was having herself a beer. Just chilling out, our gross little storage room. And she was off to bed as well, feeling a little buzzy from the beer. And when I woke up, I did some more butchering. Didn't want these dead alpaca laying around for too long. Decided I'd build the heater as well. And then it was time to get on to our working room. We're going to need a bunch of blocks for that, a bunch of blocks for our storage room as well. But Marjot had stored up a bunch, so I got busy on it. Took a break to toss some horseshoes. Seemed like a good play. Marjot and I were having good conversations. Both of us enjoyed a good beer buzz. And the cold snap passed. I started planting the corn again. Seemed like kind of a waste half the time. Gets close to being ready, stuff dies. We were considering some kind of greenhouse, indoor growing zone. Neither of us was sold on it though, considering how much work we already had. We were off to bed. I got up about 1 a.m. Got back to the business of planting corn. Nice and quiet at that hour. And I like that. After all the plants are back in the ground, I got back to working on our workroom. Trader showed up in orbit, and we contacted him. Didn't have much for us. We bought some medicine. There's some other things we'd like to have, but it didn't seem worth it to spend all of our money on this stuff yet. But we could always seem to be able to use some medicine. I ripped up some floors that were nearby. Gonna have to come out for a storage room or a working room. Marjot was chilling out doing some cloud watching. It was another fine day in all honesty. I had a meal, tossed some horseshoes, just chilled out for a bit. That was nice. Take a little break. We're building quite the house here and making good progress for once. Marjot kept right on making blocks. I kept right on working on those walls. And about 8 o'clock I hit the hay. Feeling pretty decent. Marjot was working on the animals, making sure they didn't go wild. I kept telling her we should just slaughter them. That was the end result, but she said she didn't mind. We had some fun together that night. And then I got up a few hours later, did a little work, went back to sleep once it calmed down. It was a fine night. The next day, was back to work as usual. We decided to haul a bunch of stone chunks around so Marjot would have an easier time making blocks. She took a break to toss some horseshoes. Some fella came down about that time, right out of the sky. Seemed pretty well wounded. It seemed like a pretty decent fella too. We decided we probably couldn't leave him there to die. He hadn't done anything to us. He didn't wish us any ill. So Marjot ran out, rescued the fellow. I was still hauling blocks for her. He was pretty touch and go in terms of health, but Marjot made it in time. His name was Lord, apparently. It's weird, calling someone Lord. Almost like medieval times. We were sleeping that night. Some cactus fruit fell out of the sky. That kind of stuff's always welcome. We had some fun once again. And we had most of the blocks, chunks that we had wanted hauled in. Marjot ran out, grabbed the cactus fruit. Sadly, we had a huge pile of dead bodies over there. More cargo pods arrived next. This time someone decided to shoot some steel out. A lynx killed one of our little alpacas. Once again, we weren't too upset by it. And a warg attacked one of our baby muffalo. All these baby animals might have to be kept inside if we want them not to get killed. It is what it is, though. It's nature's way. And there's always the problem of us having too many animals. Lord got up about that time, started wandering off. He's having a hard time. Now he seemed like he'd make it, and we waved him goodbye as he passed through. I was disassembling some walls that were nearby. Marjot was off to bed. Lord had left some bloodstains in our room. We were going to have to get to cleaning that up. Once again, we had some fun together that night. You might say our relationship was really flourishing lately. I was chilling out, enjoying some time in our living room, and then it was time to get back to work. Marjot made some more blocks. I was getting close to finishing the storage room. Marjot was taking a walk around, just checking out what we'd made. And I finished the storage room, got the roof put up. We're gonna need some lights around, that's for sure. We had all the blocks we needed to finish the workroom as well. So I got on top of that. There were a lot of trees and plants that needed to come out. Marjot kept right on making blocks. We were gonna do some walkways all around to try and keep the dirt getting in our house so much. Marjot went to bed and I got up, threw up the ceilings in the workroom, and I disassembled a bunch of floors and walls nearby, so that stuff had to be hauled in. Marjot kept right on making blocks. We decided we could get rid of that old building we'd been using, bring everything inside properly. I built some shelves, somewhere to store the things we want nearby, beer, stuff like that. We were off to bed before midnight once again. We'd hauled most of our stuff in. And once again, we had a little fun together and had to get everything brought in. Apparently relations were deteriorating, other people around, but not much we could do about that from here. We were off to bed once again just before midnight. And we'd finally gotten all of our stuff moved. About that time, some of those aliens showed up as I was chilling out, just having ripped down a bunch of roofs. These things just won't leave us alone, man. Bloodthirsty bastards. There was a whole mess of them this time. Come running in. They seem to strike you in waves. The fast ones get there. One of our muffalo was caught outside. Started doing battle. Some of those aliens. Wasn't a lot we could do for it. And eventually they dropped the poor thing. And then they all came running in, stepping on traps and getting killed. Then the next batch came in. Our guns were cutting loose on them pretty hardcore, as were we. Pretty decent security setup we had here. Seemed like we'd taken them all down. Of course, not all of them die when you shoot them down. Sometimes the damn things pop back up and come at you again. So we were a little hesitant, per usual. So we'd have to get over there, shoot them up, and that's what we did. There was a few of them alive yet. So we spent some time getting some target practice. Some of the little bastards that were laying on the ground. And when we had them all dead, it's time to move on, get this mess picked up and get our traps rebuilt. Sometimes the second group comes right after the first. I was tending up the muffalo they'd gotten a hold of. It seemed like he'd pull through. Marjot got back to making blocks when we got all the bodies taken out of here. I was rebuilding traps, but it had been a long day. All that excitement. Marjot had a meal and she came to bed too. Apparently there was an aurora on outside, but neither of us would get to enjoy it. When I got up, I tossed horseshoes for a bit. Nice relaxing day. Rebuilding traps. Maybe cleaning up blood. Not a lot to look forward to. We'd run short on meals, so I had to do some cooking. And we found some dead alpaca around. Those bear were busy animals. So we brought those in. We wouldn't have to slaughter our own as soon as we would have thought. I cooked and Marjot made blocks. That was pretty much our day. Eventually I got back to bed. Marjot had a meal, chilled out for a bit, and got herself back to bed. I woke up about 7 a.m., sat down to chill out, what might be the last time. That little structure we'd used when we first got here. Some visitors came about that time. I was busy mining. We were out of steel. Couldn't rebuild the traps, which was significantly problematic. And a mad alpaca started attacking one of the visitors at that time. Not sure what the hell went wrong with that thing, but we'd certainly butcher it up. As long as everything looked normal, we'd eat it. Marjot was still making blocks and dealing with the animals. And I was still mining, trying to get enough steel together. Our guests liked our little visiting room, which is alright with us, even if they do make a mess. And it wasn't long before the guests took off. One of our alpaca gave birth about that time. When I got up, I took a walk about. It was 8 a.m. There was an eclipse on, so it was darker than it should have been. Marjot was working on building some traps. Chunks of spacecraft came down nearby, which is always useful. And somebody was offering us something at that point. And we were considering getting out and doing some trading. Right now it was difficult. Another visitor showed up, as did a slave caravan. We were a little miffed that some slavers would show up, but we'd talk to them. At about that time, a whole bunch of aliens showed up as well. Perhaps that caravan is going to have its hands full. They whistled all the animals inside. Got to our posts. We hadn't gotten our traps all rebuilt. And the aliens started attacking that caravan. Some of them came for us and our muffalo. The dirty animals that kept the door open. The aliens got in. We couldn't watch the battle with the caravan since we had to defend ourselves. Muffalo was doing a pretty good job of holding its own. The caravan was taking off. They didn't want anything to do with this disaster. One of our alpaca, one of our muffalo were killed. Seems like baby animals have no chance in this world. Probably baby anything has no chance in all honesty. The guns are cutting loose, our muffalo were battling, and we were shooting as well. And we finally got all of them dirty aliens killed. Took all bloody day, but we got the job done. There was acid blood everywhere. One of our guns had broken down. We had a real mess on our hands. To top it all off, during that, our plants decided to take to the blight, and once again we wouldn't get a crop of corn. Corn seems like it might not be such a good play, considering it never has time to grow up before something bad happens to it. Our generator had taken some abuse. That other visitor apparently been left alone. He was leaving now too. Sadly, we never got to talk to the fella. Really could have used those traders, visitors. It's just the way it goes, though. One of the people from the caravan had been killed, so we dug a grave for him. Didn't want to put him in a pile with the rest of the aliens and pirates that had attacked us. And again, we were going to have our hands full for a little while, just cleaning this mess up. So much to do. Muffalo to feed, bodies to haul, blood to clean. Bunch of rainbow petals came down out of the sky. There was a dead lynx and a dead warg. They must have gotten into a battle. We had an animal that needed tending. They kept walking through the acid blood and getting burned. I was working on the floors, decided to go to bed. Marjot came in and did some work on the floors as well. And then she went to bed. When I got up, I did a bit of cloud watching. It was a nice morning. I didn't want to be anywhere near where that battle had happened. Marjot felt the same way. All of her corn and cotton were wrecked by the blight at that point. I had to cut all those out. One of our power lines went nuts. Didn't start a fire though. Fortunately, we built everything out of stone. I had to cut out all the plants. I ended up going to bed. Been a bit of a rough day. Marjot had been going around doing cleaning, trying to get this disaster somewhat in better shape. When I got up, I cut trees and then I got to cleaning. The last of the blighted plants were cut out as well. It's a real nightmare with this stuff. And then it was time to replant all the corn, the umpteenth time. Once again, feels like kind of a waste of time. Never seems to make it. Marjot was tossing horseshoes, chuckling to herself. I was hoping she wasn't going mad, all the violence, but she seemed alright. Another day was passing. I had myself a meal, decided to do some cooking. Marjot was going to work on some of the traps. Seemed like that should be a priority. I was making some packaged survival meals to see if I could get out and do some trading while I had the opportunity. We hit the hay just before midnight once again, and we were both feeling pretty good despite everything. And when we got up, it was time to build some traps. Some more cargo pods came down nearby. Cloudberries this time. Pretty awesome. We got more food that way. Tell you what, I was having a beer. Marjot was working on the traps, and then I joined her. We got all those rebuilt. Still some wall sections missing. There was a ship overhead we could talk to, so I gave him a ring. They had all kinds of interesting stuff. I sold them tea and drugs. They had a flat screen TV and a telescope, which was deeply intriguing. We had to put our silver where the beacon could see it so I could buy that TV. And we debated on the telescope as well, but that seemed like overkill. We were going to do some of the outside floors sooner rather than later in an attempt to keep the mess at bay. And with a flat screen TV, we'd be able to see what was going on in the world a bit. As depressing as the news is, aliens attacking everywhere, swarming and killing people. Some cows joined us about that time. That seemed interesting. They were both female. Thank God we didn't need a herd of cows running around here. I was working on the floors in the workroom. Marjot was having herself a beer. And our house was coming together real nice. A solar flare happened about that time. So we had to work in the dark. But it was what it was. Perhaps we should have made our storage room a little bigger. And we might have to reconfigure that at some point. We'll see. Maybe we can make a backup storage somewhere. We don't need all this stuff. It just gathers. Makes people want to come steal it. What it seems like to me. Man, we were chilling out. Having a good night's sleep. Not a lot to complain about.